Life is hard, and there are a million voices and distractions coming in from every direction. But the voice that matters most is God's. Join us as we discuss God's Word and how that applies to our everyday lives. It's time to dive in. So, girl, listen up. Welcome to Girl Listen Up, a podcast of Built Up Ministries. My name is Jennai, and this is Melissa.
Hey guys, we're so glad that you are listening in today or watching if that's how you like to consume our content. But we're incredibly grateful that you're joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Girl Listen Up, this is a podcast where we get to speak to and from just about women, and we are just have a heart just to talk about some of the unique challenges and situations that we face, but in a way that connects to God and how we can live out our faith well.
Like Janae said, to and from women to women as well. And I think that the big thing that we love to also highlight in our podcast is that we also speak to the mentors that are out there who get to impact and inspire those around them. So that's what we're excited for diving into. So I'm really excited.
So, girl, listen up. Today's episode is on confidence.
Woo! I love me some talk about some confidence.
Yes, I know you're super passionate
Yes.
about just, you're a mentor, as we've maybe talked about a little bit before. But if you didn't know, Melissa mentors people. And so I know you have such a heart just for teaching or helping people find their confidence.
Yes.
So, with that, what is something that you have seen that's been a common denominator or a common challenge that people have just faced with having confidence?
Yeah, so I think that confidence is such a big factor in people's lives because I what people hold back on is because they don't feel confident in moving forward of what God has in store for them. So a lot of times it's easier not to. People have realized that they don't have to be as confident because they're behind a screen. So human interactions are harder. Also, insecurity and anxiety can lead to a lot of a lack of self confidence or self esteem that really makes it happen for us. And then I also believe that sometimes we're told that we're not old enough or we're not experienced enough or we don't know enough to be able to make it happen. And so to me, the reason why I'm so passionate about confidence is that I've been there where I have not felt confident and I've seen it not put me in I've seen it like hold me back in positions where I could have like really impacted those around me or help a situation, but I have learned through it and I've been able to teach people about it. And that's what I love the most about this topic today with confidence.
I agree. I'm also excited about this topic. I struggled with this a lot growing up. I'm still working on it, but as I was preparing for this, I didn't realize how crippling I think, lack of confidence, I think that's the right word I was looking for. My lack of confidence was in my life. I remember, so you talked about like human interaction. I was such a nervous and like shy girl, which is so funny because if you meet me in person, I'm not like that at all. But I just remember like I hated talking on the phone. I hated ordering. My parents always had to push me to be like, okay, you have to order. And I'm like, no, 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 you can order for me. This is what I want.
Yes.
It was so bad to the point that I would like make an excuse to go to the bathroom when the waiter was about to take our order. And so I didn't have to go and talk. So I was like, here, mom and dad, this is what I want. I had to go to the bathroom. It was so bad.
Oh my gosh. Well, I think that it's hard, like trying to overcome the confidence piece to feel confident to be able to go do those things. And things as simple as ordering or talking on the phone are big pieces. You know me, I love the numbers. And so some of the things I went and looked up as we are preparing was according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, 80% of women struggle with low self esteem and shy away from self advocacy at like work in different workplaces as well. So, in other words, 4 in 5 women will hold back, and so they won't pursue career advancement, and they feel like they lack that confidence overall, which, man, is just so huge, especially as women, because we are um, bold and strong and powerful, but yet we don't think that of ourselves on a day-to-day basis.
I think sometimes it's what we hear people say. So, like being in ministry, I'm one of, I think I actually am the youngest on the team. But my mom for so long was like, I see you as a leader. I see you going into ministry. And I was like, I just don't, like, I always have to struggle with that inner self thought as me as well. Like, I'm young, and like even back when my mom was like, I see this in you from a younger age. I was like, I don't have like the right skill set for it. Like, I can't see myself doing this. It's just a lot of like self doubt on myself. And some people might be hearing it from other people as well. Like, you're not good enough. Like you said, you're too young to pursue this. Like, wait till you're older. But then when older comes, you're like, I don't have the experience now, or like it's just like there's never a right time for it.
And it feels like it's not a right time, but there actually is. It is the right time, no matter what, which is so true. I know for me, I would love for us to talk about our experiences. I know you talked a little bit there, but I know for me, like so as I've kind of grown, and again, I'm not perfect 100%. Like, I'm not saying like I'm confident in every situation right now. There's definitely times where I have to pause and be like, I don't know if I can do this, but I have to figure out how to muscle through it. But I think my biggest driver of lack of self confidence or low self esteem is the fear of disappointing those around me or feel a failure that really drives it for me. Growing up, I feel like I normally would run from situations because I rather avoid it versus tackle it head on because I was afraid of actually making someone feel bad or disappoint somebody or fail in the things I was trying to accomplish overall. But I really got to learn more about confidence when I became a resident assistant in college. So, as an RA, is what we used to call it, man, I had to get out of my comfort zone so many times. When I was connecting with people on my floor, I would host events, I would have to hold them accountable, I would have to do all these things. And I learned the most about myself and learned the most of the ability to have confidence in those situations. I remember specifically I had to go into someone's room and have to like hold one of our policies, and I hold to the standard of one of our policies. And I remember my gut was just like, I was like shaking and my gut was twisting. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. What do they think bad of me? They're going to hate me. They're not going to like me. But I knew I had to do my job and hold them accountable of what was expected on our floor. And while it was a very difficult moment, a difficult situation, I was able to overcome it. And because of those moments, it has helped build up my confidence over time to where I am at now.
Wow, that's crazy. I definitely would not have the confidence to be an RA in college. But so going back to kind of how I said this has been really crippling, one of the things I really struggled with is knowing that there was a difference between cocky and confident. I thought like being confident meant you were cocky. And I did soccer, and so I had a coach, I think, I don't even know when, my 8th grade year, maybe something like that. Anyways, I had a soccer coach who like wanted perfection, and so every time you mess up, I would get yelled at. Everyone would get yelled at. He kind of had a favorite too, and so you would also get benched too if you like really had a bad game. So it kind of felt like I was taught like when you mess up, like you don't you get a consequence kind of thing. So I didn't realize kind of like making a mistake is okay until later, and it took me a while to like actually like believe it. Like still to this day you can ask my family like when I'm gonna make a mistake, sometimes I'm like, I'm sorry, and they're like, why are you apologizing? I'm like, I just like feel so bad. Like I don't know, I kind of have that same thing you were talking about, like fear of failure, fear like disappointment type of thing. Like I don't want to like make someone like upset because of something that I did, and I feel like so guilty because of it. And so it just was crazy. I didn't really learn confidence really helped me grow. Actually, I'm still working on it, let's just say that. Like I don't know, let me just preface that as I'm saying like I'm learning still. But I did an internship over the summer with a church where I really had to wrestle with like being out of my comfort zone, like you were saying, and that was so hard for me. And one of the big things that I think really helped me was they had a really high feedback culture. But before going into that, they preface like, okay, so we have a high feedback culture. And with this, you really have to know that we all care about you.
Mm-hmm.
So when we give feedback, it's not to like downgrade you, like to make you feel
Mm-hmm.
bad. It's because we want to help you grow and help you succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So we're giving you feedback to help you for maybe the next time of what you could improve on.
Yeah.
And that changed my perspective so much because for me, I'm so sensitive
Mm.
with like words, which is funny because my love language is words of affirmation.
Yes.
But it's really the way that the tone that people take. So like when my coach was yelling at me, I was like, I can't do this. Like I'm so overwhelmed.
But those are definitely, I love that you talked about that. And your confidence was built through a safe space that someone created for you too. I'm able to build up that confidence through feedback that was done well and those kind of pieces as well.
Yeah, it was definitely difficult. I think just with when you were just dealing with anxiety and so much
Mhm.
insecurity, I think it takes time.
It does. It 100% takes time.
Yeah, I think it takes time and it's definitely uncomfortable. I
Mm,
mean, I
mhm.
mean, comfort zone is called comfort for a reason.
Yes, it is. It is. And I think about too, like as you're getting put in these situations, the very real. It's actually a psychology term, imposter syndrome. So that's a big piece too of like we don't feel like. So when you're talking about these failures, like we get into our head thinking we are not good enough. I am not capable of doing this. Like imposter syndrome literally means that you feel like an imposter, that someone's gonna find out you're not who you really are, that you can actually figure this out and you can actually be the right person for the job or right person for something you're handling. But I promise you, imposter syndrome, it is not something that can define you or cripple you as well.
Yeah, you know what I love when you were talking about just like imposter syndrome and what I feel like too for me is like my self-doubt of like I'm not good enough, like who am I to do this? Because I'm so grateful that like God like wrote the Bible for us, and
Mm-hmm.
someone who I relate so much to is Moses. And so looking in Exodus 3, we see that ooh, let me um sorry. Okay. So Exodus 3, verse 11, we see that Moses says, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God answered, "I will certainly be with you." And
Mm.
so I think we really need to have some context about why Moses kind of was like, "Who am I?" So at that time, Jews were enslaved by the Egyptians. And God came to Moses and told him to go talk to Pharaoh to let his people go. And from birth, Moses was actually set apart from God. So at that time, when Moses was a baby, there was an order to kill all the Jewish boy babies.
Mm-hmm.
And so Moses was actually saved by the providence of God. And so his mother put him in a basket in the river to save him. And he actually ended up coming to Pharaoh's house, and he was raised there and was actually was so he was raised as a member of Pharaoh's household, but he never identified with them.
Mm-hmm.
He identified as an Israelite. And he didn't want to wait on God's timing, so he actually took matters into his own hands, which led him to murder an Egyptian, and then he fled for his life.
Mm-hmm.
And then 40 years later, having done what he did and being so disconnected from his people, when God was asking him to go do this, I could imagine just like him being like, why he would ask, "Who am I?" with just
Mm-hmm.
all the failures and weaknesses that
Mm-hmm.
have just caused him to have that lack of self confidence. But what I really loved that God responded is that I will certainly be with you,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't have to rely on our own strength. Like we have liabilities and
Mm-hmm.
limitations, but God doesn't, and that is just so cool. Of just like that whole story of why I relate to Him is because
Yeah.
I ask my that question of who am I? I don't
Mm-hmm.
have the capability. I don't have the skill set to do this and this, but God does, and so relying on
Mm-hmm.
Him is actually where
Yeah.
we can find our strength.
Yeah, so confidence, it's not a will of our own, it's the will that God puts into us that we can um, be able to accomplish the things with his strength, which is so cool and almost comforting. I don't know about you, it's really comforting to know that I don't have to have it. Like I don't have to go to the store and pick up confidence and like install it. It's like no, like God will give you the strength. He will give you the confidence on how to handle different situations. And so I love, because I know you talked to me before about you love the story of Moses because you just relate so much to him.
Yeah, I think also with that too, with just like you don't have to like go buy confidence. You really do have to ask, but I think it's still on your part of having to work through things,
Yes.
and just like your own self doubt. But like it really is comforting to know like it kind of takes like a weight off of your shoulders
Yes.
of like okay, like I'm honestly not enough, but through God I am. So it helps me a lot when I actually invite him into what I'm doing. So if I have to like go talk in front of something, or even this podcast sometimes can be very nerve wracking, I'm like, take a deep breath, and then I pray to God and just remind myself like he will be with us if we ask, or well, he is with us, but like really when we ask and invite him in, and like we like really know like he is with us and he is for us, that he will just provide for us. Like I said, it does take work and pushing yourself out there. It's not just gonna magically happen. I wish it did.
Yeah, he asks of us to actually do the work too. It's not just plops into your lap. But I want to re-emphasize too what you talked about there, that he is with you. So in Joshua 1:9, this is my command: be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or discouraged, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go.
I love that. He is with you wherever you go.
Yes.
And I love that he said, this is like, this is my command, because he commands you, be strong and courageous. I actually heard when I was helping out with a VBS like a year ago, I don't know, sometime past couple of summers, they had this verse in a song, and it really just stuck out to me because that was one of the times that I was working through confidence, and that was one of the verses that I always had to go back and reminded myself, one, that he is with you wherever you go, two, that it's a command to be strong and courageous and do not be afraid or discouraged.
I love that. Can you still sing the song?
No.
Oh
Maybe,
man, I was hoping you could sing it for us.
maybe. See, I remember, but I don't remember it.
Yeah. Girl, you're like, I'm just telling you I don't remember because I don't want to sing in front of the podcast.
Yeah, that's more. I really don't want to sing.
This is so good. I can't wait. Well, maybe afterwards. Well, I get to hear
Yeah,
it. So.
maybe if I can remember.
So man, there's a lot of experiences that we're talking about that happens in the Bible. So Janae, how have you, since as we've learned from the Bible about it, what is like how you positively benefit from this, and what are times where you're either still working through it or like kind of like I don't want to say negative, but areas you're still challenged and working on?
Yeah, so I definitely think where I'm still struggling, I think sometimes I still try to do things on my own, and so I think that's where I get in trouble, or I just that's where I struggle, is I sometimes just forget that like I can ask for help, and I just really have to stop and remember to pray, to ask God for help, because I can't do it on my own strength. And so I just think it's so cool that over and over the Bible tells us that with every step of the way, that we're not supposed to do our things by our own strength. And that's where I've seen myself do better in this, is that one, it's a constant reminder of myself, of like that verse I was telling you of that, and just even Moses, a constant reminder that in every situation where I feel anxious and insecure, I just have to remember that God is with me, and I can ask him for strength or even words to say if that's what I'm really worried about.
That's good. That's really good. I love how you just really are understanding like what he has in store for you as you've like navigated through this. I know for me, like where I struggle sometimes, where I maybe have definitely missed the mark. When I try to do things on my own, I go either one of two ways. Either go really one way where it's like it's crippling, my self worth is really far down, or I swing all the way to the side of arrogance and pride when I'm a little too confident around those things, um, and that's when I'm trying to do it under my own understanding, like not in his understanding and what he has in store for me, but I'm trying to do it on my own. So I am choosing to take charge of my life in that aspect. So, but then it begins to spiral. It spirals towards low self esteem where I don't feel good enough. I don't feel worthy. I feel like I'm unable to accomplish these things. Or I go to the far side of arrogance and pride, and I feel like I don't need him and I feel like I can handle it on my own. But boy, real fast, my downfall comes pretty quickly after those pride moments. Even like I think about when I'm getting married, when I was married, being married to my husband. Oh my gosh, um, I like to think that sometimes I think that I am right and I know what I'm talking about. But man, I eat some humble pie sometimes real fast because um, I find out, hey, I got relied too much on my own understanding and not the understanding God has in store for me.
I love that. Definitely gonna need that advice when I get married. Of don't think you're the only one that's right.
Yes, but 100%. But yeah, so some of the things though that I feel like when I am really diving into the Word and understanding who God says I am under His with His character, and it is really that words matter. And so ensuring that I am putting myself in situations by the things I read, the things I listen to, the content that I'm consuming, that it's positive. And what are the words I'm telling myself? And those are coming from God of saying, hey, you are able, you are worthy. Just like he told Moses that I'm going to be with you and you can make it happen. I'll give you the words to speak. He sent his brother Aaron to help support him. Like God will provide. And when I've come to that understanding of that he will be there through all things, that I don't have to be perfect, that I don't have to have it all put together, he will give me the resources, tools, or answers to make that happen.
I love that you said that he sent Aaron, his brother, with Moses to help him out, because I definitely need help a lot with just this area specifically. And we are not made to do life alone as well. So just having those people in your life is so helpful and so influential. And that leads us to having a mentor come on and talk about their own experience with confidence.
Yeah. Well, Jen, thanks for joining us again today for the mentorship piece. So we're always so grateful when you join us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. So we definitely have some questions. So we're talking about confidence, and what I'm excited to hear from you is just like how you've navigated these things. So my first question is, how do you find that balance of being confident in yourself, but not being overly confident that it becomes arrogant?
That's a great question. I think I just remember advice or really just a nugget of truth that you're like, oh, that's good. I need to hold on to that for the rest of my life. From a mentor who said that any good in me is Christ in me. It's not anything that I've done in and of myself. Like the only thing she was like to take credit for is all the things that, you don't do right, because that's definitely 100% you. And I love that is because it reminds me of what Paul said. And he said, in my weakness, I'm going to boast because that's when Christ is seen. And I think the difference is, where's my source, right? So if I'm finding it based on my own skill, intellect, things that I know I'm good at, then that's generally where I'm going to operate into arrogance. But when I remember that every good and perfect gift comes from the Father above, and that He's the one who uniquely created me and gifted me, but also withheld some of the giftings, because I think that's what Paul is getting at. Like, it is the kindness of God to give us weaknesses, because if we didn't, where would we ever go to Him for things? And so I think the difference is, where do you go for your source of feeling enough, because we aren't ever going to be enough, but through Christ, we will have everything we need in order to accomplish what we're called to do.
Man, that gives me that follow-up question that people always say have confidence, but what does that actually mean and how do we find that? And I think you started to tap into that a little bit too.
Yeah, I think it really is. We always have to cultivate our relationship with Jesus, right? Because we always want to come from that and not for it. Because we're going to always chase the things that God wants us to experience in Him, like love, acceptance, purpose, all those things. But when we come from you know, who he is and who we are because of who he is, then we don't have to actually chase it in things. And for me, this kind of connects to, I don't know if you remember when we did our training, I talked about how, number one, Jesus calls us first to him before he commissions us. And then that, again, is our time in him where we get to know who he is. Because when we know who he is, we know and find ourselves because we're in Christ.
Yeah.
But the key is that he then gives in the details of what we're commissioned to do. And in that, he gives us his power and authority. And so when you recognize that God is the one who's called me to these particular tasks, whatever it is, whether it's at school, in vocation, on a soccer field, then I'm coming from his power and authority, well, then it doesn't matter whether or not you like it, agree with it, see it. Like, I'm coming from there, and therefore I'm going to run and do well what God's called me to, because I know that he has given it to me, and my confidence is coming from that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question.
No,
Yeah,
no,
that's
it
kinda
does.
what I think about.
What I hear you saying is that, like, he is the source. It's almost like he's the power source of what confidence is. And like, if he tells you to go forward, then you're going to go forward, and you're able to be reassured that no matter what, that he's having you in the right path when you spend that time and you actually point back to that
Yeah,
source.
I mean, think of it as like fuel, right? A car can't go anywhere without gas. And so we can put in, you know, if you're unleaded and you put in diesel, you ruin the vehicle. And I think we do that, right? We put in unhealthy things, whether they're what the world values or what we think, you know, in and of ourselves. And it's like Romans 11, I think it's 36, says that from him and through him and to him are all things. This means, like, I don't have to figure out on my own. I can go to him, and it's going to be one of those things. He's either going to give me what I lack, he's going to do it for me, or else he's going to bring someone else or circumstance that's going to work it out. But it's always about him, because like, I know you guys were talking about Moses, and you know, he was like giving all his excuses, and it was never about that. Like, God was saying, hey, it doesn't matter. I go with you wherever you are. And so as long as you have me, you have everything you need. Like, sure, he had Aaron, and he also had a super cool staff that but it wasn't about those things. It was about the fact that God was always there.
Yeah, and like Moses gave his heart to him versus like relying on his own understanding.
Yeah, and we have to, because again, it's his grace and his kindness to give us weaknesses so that we will allow him to be seen, not us, because that's what it's about. We don't want ourselves to be seen. And so we can go do what God's called us to do, because he gives us himself. He gives us his power and authority to accomplish what we need to do.
Do you feel like in the life you've lived, like, if you could like put a scale on it of how confident you feel now, how do you feel confident do you feel as you've grown throughout life?
I mean, definitely better than I am, and a lot of it is just because I've learned who I am because of him. And a lot of times when I mentor, you know, and help people navigate through situations, especially because confidence, I think you guys talked about how it's so common for women to not feel that way, is to always go, what do I know to be true about God? Like, you've heard me say it to you, like, what do you know to be true about God? And how does that change how you react in that situation? And so for me, I've grown in confidence, not because I'm awesome. I'm still a hot mess, still have a lot of things I can't do well. But I know the one who's called me. And so if he's asked me to do it, then it's my job to honor him and say yes and steward what he's given me, and then allow the results to be what they are, because that's all God cares about is, you know, do I lean into him, and do I let him use me however he wants, even if I know I'm not the right person? It's okay, because he's called. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Jen, thank you so much for this time. I'm always incredibly grateful for it, and I'm excited for the listeners to also learn more from you too.
Well, thank you for having me.
Wow, just having that time with Jen, like, every single time I just feel just a little bit more inspired and understanding of what her mentorship brings to us. So, Jennai, listening to that, what was like one thing you took away from there?
I loved when she referenced Romans 11:36, which says, "From him and through him and for him are all things." To him be the glory forever. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that so much because she talked about like every time we do something good, it's because of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so that almost takes off the one, like if you have pride, like remember, like what you do is not because of yourself, it's actually because of God and the gifts he's given you.
Mm-hmm.
But it also lifts a weight off of yourself if you are have lack of self-confidence and just like you feel like you can't do anything, because God will provide for you.
Yeah, I think what I love the most too from her was that the Lord is our sole source of confidence. It's not anything I can do, not anything I can bring. That He is the sole source. He is the fuel to help me be confident in situations and be able to do what He has in store for me overall too.
Something that's helped me that I would also give like advice for you as a mentor as well, is that something she's always done to me is point me back to Jesus like constantly. So like I said, struggle with this so much, and so when I go to her sometimes, I'm like, Mom, I'm so stressed, I can't do this, like I don't know how to do this either. She's like, she literally point blank says, did you pray about it? Did you ask God for help? And I'm like, oh, yeah, definitely need to do that. And so I am so grateful when she does that. And she does that in everything. And I find so much more peace when I go to God first instead of my mom. And I love my mom, don't get me wrong, but God is the one that we're supposed to run to first through everything.
That's so true. I love that. Well, kind of wrapping up our time together. So, like, what advice would you give someone who is also a mentor to those around us who struggle with confidence?
Yeah, I think besides just like, I mean, yes, always point them to Jesus. Another thing is like when you are like encouraging them, I think make sure you point them back to Jesus in that way. For example, if like they did something great, you could be like, oh, that you like, I love how God has gifted you and helped you in this specific area.
I agree. I think my piece of advice would be confidence is a muscle and you have to grow it. And how are you being intentional with growing that muscle? How are you going to Him in regards to His character and what His character speaks to you and who you are in Him? If you don't grow this muscle of confidence, it won't grow. It's kind of like when you work out. Like I feel like when you're working out, you could be doing all these different exercises. Like I'm doing legs all the time. My arms aren't going to grow because I need to work on the arm muscles as well. And that's the same with confidence. We had to be intentional with that. So if you were a mentor, teaching those around you how to grow their confidence, really be curious, highlight and encourage those wins that they have, as well as being intentional with, hey, point them to the source. Hey, have you prayed about it? Have you remembered who God is and His character? Have you read about it in the Bible? These are really the pieces that help grow the confidence overall.
Yes, that's so good. And then how would you encourage someone who is struggling with confidence?
I would say me and you both, girl. We are on this journey together. And don't be discouraged if tomorrow you don't wake up and you don't have confidence yet. It is a journey, it is a process, it is a consistent battle, especially as women as we deal with. But I am reminded by the verse in 2 Corinthians, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is perfected in weakness. Therefore, I will most gladly boast all the more about my weakness so that Christ's power may reside in me. And no matter what weaknesses I may have, God's going to use it for good. And He's going to provide and He's going to be able to give me the tools and resources, from words to say to people in my life, or maybe it's just working through others that I give that encouragement to them. But I know that as you're trying to get closer to Him, just know that you don't have to be perfect, that He will actually use your weaknesses for good.
I love that. I think my mom talked about that a little bit too, of our weaknesses or where like God like helps us and provides for us. And something she always says that helps me so much is that our limitations and liabilities are actually opportunities for us to experience more of Jesus. And I feel like that's so true because anytime like we are having a hard time and going back to the Bible and asking Jesus for help, I think those are the times that actually grow a relationship more. I think in friendships, like we talk about, just like the genuine friendship is when you walk alongside someone and you get to hear some of their burdens, and it's like a two-way street, right? But I think that's when you cultivate those relationships, is when you guys stick by each other actually, and you go through something hard together.
I love that. Yeah, we go through hard things together all the time, which is good. It feels so good to have someone who gets to walk on that journey together. That way you're not alone, because we don't want to be alone around those things.
And what is one takeaway that you hope someone walks away with?
Oh man, if you could, I really hope that you take away this idea that confidence is a skill that can be taught and can be built. So don't think that you're born with no confidence. Like, it can be built and it can grow. But how to get that happen is relying on who the source is. It is putting maybe yourself in situations where you do have to grow confidence. So the only way we grow is by maybe putting ourselves outside of our comfort zone and not always staying in our comfort zone. So go out and ask that friend to come to church. Go out and introduce yourself to build more community. Go outside your comfort zone, because that's where your confidence will grow the most. And just remember that He is your source of confidence. He will give you the words, He will give you the action to be able to make that happen.
To piggyback off that, for me, knowing who the source is, I would say just read some of his, like, find God's characteristics. That's a hard word for me to say. Just about him, like God's characteristics, and then also look about what he says to us. I know in Psalms 139, he says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And if you take the time to find those, for me, it's so encouraging to know who God is, and then to know what he says about me because of who he is.
That's so good. Well, thanks, Jennai.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening today. Melissa and I are so grateful that you take time to just watch or listen however you consume our content.
Be sure to check us out at Built Up Ministries on Instagram or our website at builtup.org to keep up to date on upcoming podcasts, newsletters, and content that gets posted weekly. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast episode. To learn more about Built Up Ministries or the Girl Listen Up podcast, head to www.builtup.org.